Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This show, of course, discovers and covers all things Star Trek and the Orville and whatever's going on within those wonderful universes. This week, we've got a great show for you. We're going to be covering the latest two episodes of Star Trek Prodigy. Episode 17, A Ghost in the Machine, and Episode 18, Mindwalk. Hopefully, I will learn to talk before the end of this podcast. But we've got a great show. We got it's a little bit of holiday time. So guess what? We got some extra people in here. But first and foremost, I can't do an episode of Union Federation, especially when we're talking Star Trek Prodigy, without my favorite holographic captain and counselor, Miss Amy Nelson.
Well, hello. Oh my goodness. It is happy holidays to everyone. And yes, hello, Prodigy.
I am excited, but I'm even more excited because some of your BQN fellows are joining us, and I would like for you to introduce the newest member of BQN to the Fandom Podcast Network Society.
Davey Willett. Hello, Davey.
Well, good evening and good morning from Australia.
Yes. Now, listeners, if you haven't checked out Trexpert's quiz, you really must. Davey does such an amazing job writing all the questions, all the pre-production, the posts, like awesome. So much fun. I've been on it, so you could check out that episode. Davey, I still can't believe you do all of that work for Trexpert's quiz.
Look, I was worried how much work it was going to be myself to start with, but when you enjoy what you're doing, it kind of makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that you are enjoying it and glad that you are on BQN with us.
I'm worried he might throw a pop quiz in at the end of the episode. I'm being cautious.
I'd be actually in the hot seat myself.
You know what, though? There's another guy who's been missing from the Union Federation for a little bit here. He's been out on special assignment, but he's back. He's caught up on Prodigy. He went through a kevmorphosis while he was gone. Of course, he is the one and only co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. My brother from another mother, Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
Hey, I hope you don't mind. I just got jumped into a Tellarite biker gang. It's a pretty rough, but I'm doing okay. And then a quick stop in Australia, but I'm back.
Well, we are glad to have you back. You've been missed, my friend, and it's going to be fun talking some Prodigy because I got some questions for you because you got caught up in a quick way. But you know what? The BQN influence, they are assimilating us tonight. And we're going to have two Kevins on this show. But one, I believe, has a few more ties to the North Pole. He does some amazing charity work in his other identity. Kevin from BQN, because that's how we're going to identify you. So BQN Kevin, FPN Kevin, just so we don't have confusion.
Welcome BQN Kevin.
Hey, it's good to be here. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, everyone.
We are glad to have you back here on the good ship Union Federation. I gotta give you some credit, though, because you have been doing some amazing work outside of the Star Trek realm with making some real great holidays for a lot of kids and a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I love my holiday job. I'm very, very tired, though. Christmas is next week. Then the suit gets hung up for another 10 months because my Santa season starts at the beginning of November every year. So,
yeah, and you do a phenomenal work, and
thank you.
So honored by what you do, and so proud of it. So thank you for what you're doing, Kevin. But you know what? We had another member of BQN just teleport in on us without notification, but we are always welcome to have him here. The one and only Mark White.
Hi there.
Yay!
Welcome, Mark. Welcome.
Surprise!
It's the me.
Well, it's good to have you here, Mark. How you been? It's been a bit since you've been on the Union Federation.
It has been. It's been too long. Long time listener, long time caller. No, I love popping on with you guys.
Oh, we love having you guys here, and we love this relationship we have with the BQN. We got a full proto-star here. So without further ado, let's get some things started. First and foremost, before anything, that is right. We're going to be deep diving into episodes 17 and 18 of Star Trek Prodigy, and we got a lot of voices here. So there's going to be a lot of different points of view, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, guys, let's beam into away mission number 1. And our first away mission is Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 17, Ghost in the Machine, otherwise known as the required holodeck episode. Amy, would you care to go into our mission log synopsis?
Yes. Okay. The crew uses the holodeck to simulate ways to try and warn the Dauntless of the living construct, but continually fail. They decide to take a break and enjoy some ice cream before getting some rest. After noticing some strange things about the ship, the crew soon realizes that they're still on the holodeck. They begin working their way through various holodeck simulations programmed by the crew. Zero's detective story, Jenkum's street fighting simulation, a jazz club program by Murph, and an amalgam of Dahl's pirate simulation and Rock's virtual pet game. Zero soon deduces that the simulation is designed to keep them searching for clues indefinitely and tells them to stay put as the pirate ship sinks, ending the program. Zero explains that Hologram Janeway trapped them in the holodeck, acting under a secret subroutine program by the living construct that would keep the kids busy while the protostar returned to Federation space. Hologram Janeway apologizes as the crew suddenly finds themselves face to face with the Dauntless and unable to control the protostar.
Things have been building for a while here on Prodigy, and they're really starting to come to a head with these 2 episodes. But let's start with episode 17. It is kind of every Star Trek season seems to require a holodeck episode of some kind, Kevin. FPNet, Kevin, I know you played a little bit of catch up too, so I have a couple other questions for you. But what were your initial reactions to this episode?
Yeah, you kind of go, okay, here's the holodeck one. Every Star Trek episode since TNG's got to have some type of holodeck going wonky or having fun, whatever it may be. And so I just kind of rolled with it. It was kind of fun to see the different scenarios and such, and see them kind of having fun, but still trying to figure out how it's going to tie into the running storyline that they have going here. We're having kind of like little mini cliffhangers here, which I think has been good. It's keeping the show moving. But I had to kind of get caught up in it. So I kind of did a marathon of these. And so some of my memories of what's been happening has kind of run together.
Okay, well, I do have one very important question for you, because a very important event happened in Prodigy while you were away. We all know Kevin Reitzel's love of Murph, and we had the Murphamorphosis during your travels to Australia, Kevin. I gotta know. We need to know, because you were in which if you can get a stuffed version of Murph now, which version is it? How are you feeling about the Murphamorphosis?
I'm not a fan with the Murph with legs. I like the blobby Murph. He's more cuddly. I still do my Murph plush. And I think he's still changing, so we'll see. But I miss the old Murph personally, though. So, but I mean, apparently, I've been learning a lot of stuff here. Dal is not apparently one species. He's a mixture of a bunch, which apparently is a problem with Starfleet. And there was a callback to Assume, right? If I'm remembering correctly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's that issue. And now we have contact with the Federation, and of course, with I guess we're caught up to current Star Trek timeline, which I guess if I'm thinking correctly, when it comes to the future past Voyager, we have now Star Trek Picard, and now we have this show. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly where's what. But it's interesting to see Janeway both as herself and, of course, as the hologram, and kind of trying to put the pieces together here of where this is going to end up. I'm kind of curious.
Mark White, what were your thoughts on this episode of Prodigy?
I thought it was fun. I liked seeing all the different holodeck programs that each of the characters created. As far as the Murphamorphosis, there we go. See if I can say that right. I have to agree with Kevin. I liked him as the slug. And I'm not sure what that weird phantom thing hanging above his head is. It's like there's a piece of Murph that's just floating in the ether above his skull, and I'm like, what is that defies the laws of physics? So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Well, my personal feeling on that, it's an antenna, so he can get transmissions of new songs that he can sing in his holographic.
It's not attached.
Well, it's wireless.
Okay.
BQN Kevin, what about you? What were your thoughts on this episode?
I thought the main feature of this episode was that each of the characters' holodeck simulations gave us an insight into those characters more, right? Rock Talk, we know she loves cute things, so she's playing some kind of Pokemon Go type game where she helps cute squeaky animals, right? And Zero loves a mystery. So I think that's what this episode did more than anything else, was to give us more information about our intrepid troop here and let us know more about how their minds work. And I think it did that quite well.
I agree with you. I think doing the thing with the holographic suite, each of them having their own, really was a fun idea, and they did some good things with that. Davey, your first time here on Union Fed, so I'm going to ask you two questions. First of all, what did you think of this episode, and how have you been enjoying the Prodigy ride so far?
Yeah, well, just quickly, with metamorphosis thing, I just wanted to go back to that for a second, because the little antenna on the head, I don't know if anyone's ever played the video game Pikmin, but it's a Nintendo game. Go and look it up. She looks so much like a Pikmin. It's not funny. Yeah, look, this was an interesting episode for me. I had to watch it twice because I realized halfway through that I've been playing on my phone the whole time. And so therefore I had to go back and watch again, which sort of shows how much interest I might have been paying the first time around. But when I did go back and watch, I thought it was a cute little episode in a bottle, which I think, sort of moving towards your second question, is something I think Prodigy is doing really well, is doing these sort of self-contained, almost standalone episodes with the broader arc and narrative kind of bookending each episode a little bit to an extent. But yeah, look, you're right, yeah, cliche holodeck episode. Sounds like there's been a lot of cliches in this end of Prodigy too, but it's for a younger audience who are experiencing it for the first time as well. Which I think is really exciting, and they're getting introduced to some of these tropes in very fun ways.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the big things Prodigy has done very well, is worked on bringing in a new generation of Star Trek fans. And Amy, you've been with me through the whole ride here on this season of Prodigy. It's our holodeck episode. Did you?
Yeah.
Were you enjoying yourself? Because there were some fun ones, and then some ones I'm like, this is not what I expected.
It was so much fun. And Mark, we can add this to our holodeck malfunction series on All Good Things. Add that.
Already did.
Awesome. Of course you did. Yeah. It was such a treat. Like, you get the combination of the escape room and the holodeck, and as what my Galaxy class co-host Kevin was saying, we're learning more about the characters. So we had, like, just previously the previous episode where they were telling their stories and, really being vulnerable to each other. And so each time I think the writers are really honing in on what we've been asking for. What is Star Trek? It's the character development, and we're getting so much of it. I think this episode did great. It was super fun. I love a good holodeck episode. And this is definitely a very, very good one.
Yeah. Now, one other quick question. I want to ask here for each of you, and I'll just kind of run the board real quick. Of all the different holodeck things we saw for these characters, is there one in particular that you guys would like to inject yourself into? Kevin Reitzel, I'll start with you.
Yeah, the biker gang. I thought that was kind of cool. I remember Amy, you had mentioned, and I'm still with you on this, that Jankum Pog's character kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes. I wish he would kind of get not necessarily more mature, maybe, but he's just I don't know. I'm not going to say dumb, but I just want him to develop a little bit more, learn some things. But I like the scenario. I thought it was kind of cool. It brought back a lot of different movies and styles, and I thought that was interesting.
Davey, what about you? Which one of these holographic suites would you like to participate in?
Oh, it's got to be the 1920s jazz club. Murph is a jazz singer. I am definitely here for that. I thought that was probably the more interesting and stylistic kind of one that they did, and I'm into that for sure.
Well, and it was cool that it turned to black and white too. So it's like we were fully immersed in
Yeah.
it. It was pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kevin S., for you, what holodeck wormhole are you jumping into?
I'm gonna be singing a duet with Murph. We're gonna sing My Way, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
picturing it right now,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you? Which holographic suite are you jumping into?
Well, geez, I'm gonna sound like a copycat now because that's the one I liked.
Oh.
Amy,
That was a good one.
I have a theory on why everybody likes this one.
Oh. Okay. I'm interested
because
to
I want to
hear.
ask you. I want to ask your opinion on this.
Oh, so what would I go? I really liked Zero's escape room, find the clues. That was piqued my interest.
But the reason why I think so many people like the 1920s one, could it be that you got a little bit of old school DS9 feel with the nightclub and everything
is
like
that.
that? Because I was getting some serious DS9 vibes from that as
Mhm.
as well. My favorite, just give me the ice cream. That's all I'm saying. Just give me the ice cream. Real quick too, Kevin. One of our favorites, D. Bradley Baker. Got to see a little bit of musical side from him in his voice work this month.
Love me some D. Bradley Baker. He has made quite a name for himself with Star Wars fans too, as playing the voice of all the clones in the Clone Wars, and is lead star in the Star Wars Bad Batch series, which is a new series coming out, or new season coming out soon. He's just a wonderful voice talent, and I'm so happy that he gets to do Star Trek as well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and that whole thing with Murph was such a shock and such a surprise. But there was another aspect to that 1920 that I found very interesting and a great character moment, and I want to get what each of you think. The fact that the diviner was the bartender, and you have this moment between the diviner and Gwen, even though it's holographic, and you can just tell. For me, it felt like it was something like, for Gwen, it was a moment that she finally got to maybe even let out some emotion that she didn't have because she was in initial shock, and then it's this holographic thing. Amy, what did you think of that scene? Because it caught me off guard to have that.
Yeah, and because that program wasn't hers. So, that's when it was like really merging, and it's like the computer was really digging deep into, because she wouldn't have had any program where she was discussing with her father. Like the computer had to mind meld with her. I don't know. It really came out of left field for me.
What did you think of that, Mark?
Oh, with that Gwen talking to the guy that was sort of the mixologist kind of guy that was
but they're turning out to be her a holograph of her father, and so that you just kind of had this weird awkward moment for her.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like Amy was saying, that how did the computer know? I don't think that she created a program to work out her mental health issues with her dad. I mean, maybe she did, but that's not what I gathered either. I think it is more likely that she got scanned or something. But I think we're starting to see, not just in this part, but in the last couple of episodes, we're getting to see more of John Noble's the diviner, and see a different, more well-rounded side of him, rather than just he's the villain, we shouldn't like him, fear this guy. Now we're starting to understand him more, and maybe it doesn't make his actions right the more we learn about him, but we are at least learning more about him, and he's getting more fleshed out, so that I appreciate. And here was another example of us interacting with that character in a way that's not negative, and she's actually it's sort of a positive dialogue with her dad.
Kevin, what about you? Was this Kevin S? Let me specify.
Yeah,
here.
I think you got to remember that this whole thing was set up by hologram Janeway too, right? So she and part of what her motivation was to keep them occupied. So what's going to keep Gwen occupied? Confronting her dad, right? That's gonna be stuck in her head, and then she won't, if that's the overriding thing that's in her head is her father, then she won't be of much use to help solve the problems. I think is probably what they were thinking. So I think you always have to remember where the issue came from, and in this case, it's our friend Janeway. I think that's something that we shouldn't overlook.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. We're going to get into that more here in a little bit too. Davey, what about you? What did you feel of that whole exchange between Gwen and her quote-unquote father?
Yeah, it's, I guess, somewhat cathartic for her, but thinking to Mark's point as well, how fabulous that the younger audience is, and sorry, I do often think about what the younger audience might be getting out of it, that they're getting a nuanced and layered villain who actually has interesting motives that are somewhat human in a way. Because often in these kind of cartoons and stories that kids get, your bad guy is just bad. They're evil and that's it. This person is a villain, but there is more to them than just wanting to destroy the Federation or wanting to blow up the Protostar. And I think that's a fabulous tale and a fabulous lesson for, us as the adult viewers of the program and also for the younger viewers too. And I think we learn a little bit more about that in the next episode when we get to that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and I think part of the I'm going to be honest with you, and this comes back to the voice actors. Part of the reason why the Diviner is so intriguing as a villain too is the amazing voice work by John Noble on this show. His voice alone commands so much presence. Kevin Reitzel, we have experienced that with him through so many different things, whether it's been Lord of the Rings or Fringe or so many shows he's done. He is such a presence, especially being a force of evil, and his voice just resonates so well. It's one of my favorite parts of Prodigy, is having him part of this.
I had a chance to meet John Noble at a convention. I wanted to get a card signed by him, and he took the moment to just chat me up a minute or so, and I was reminded of his voice and how resonating it is. He has one of those voices where when he's in a room talking, you listen to him, and no matter what situation. And he was very sweet to the fans. He took time, and I just want to give a shout out to him as a person, kind guy.
Yeah, very, very kind. I've been lucky enough to meet him at a convention as well, and he was nothing but a pure gentleman. So very, very fortunate for that. But guys, I want to get into some tropes, trivia, and Easter eggs here and talk about some points here within this episode. Starting with the fact that we have the opening holodeck battle scene. I don't know about you guys, but I was kind of feeling a little Kobayashi Maru for the Prodigy with this battle scene. They kept running it. They kept getting defeated. Dowda ends the simulation moments before the fatal torpedo hits. And am I the only one that was feeling that? I'm kind of curious to see what each of you guys were thinking on that.
That was totally Kobayashi. Yeah, I definitely see where you're going with that. Although I have to say, when it first starts, I guess it's similar to that one Star Trek movie that starts with the Kobayashi Maru. Whatever one it is. Is it the Khan movie? I don't know. One of the Star Trek movies. I should go on Davey's trivia again with this one. But
that would be Star Trek 09, which we will be hearing on Couch Potato Theater.
But they did it in an original series.
That's
well.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
It has to be the one with the Khan, because isn't it Kirstie Alley's Saavik is doing it?
Yep.
But so similar to that, it's a cold open with that, and I totally got lost in it, and I was like, oh wow, this is happening. Oh, okay, everybody's about to die. Oh wow, that's a strange way to start the episode. And then you find out that it's a holodeck episode. So I thought that cold open was a cool sort of nod to, I guess, the Wrath of Khan opening.
Kevin S., what were you pulling some Kobayashi Maru vibes there?
To be honest, no. But the thing that sets it apart from a Kobayashi Maru story is the stakes, right? The
Yeah.
stakes of doing the Kobayashi Maru is, do you pass or fail out of Starfleet Academy? The stakes of this are, do we save the Federation? Right? These kids are trying to save the entire Federation. So I don't blame them for doing the simulation 85 times. They've got to get it right, or else an entire civilization could fall. And that's a lot of weight to put on the shoulders of 6 kids.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they're in a no-win. It's almost a no-win situation for them anyway. And we'll find out more about that for some of them, even more so later.
Mhm.
I want to move on to once more with clarity. Once Holo Janeway's betrayal is revealed, flashbacks show how she engineered the situation to trap the crew and get Dahl's command code so she could gain helm control and lock out the crew. Of course, we also find out too that holograph Janeway is being controlled by the weapon that's within the protostar, and I think that's actually a beautifully done piece of writing, Amy, where you've got this threat, and now it's becoming as just much of a threat because the protostar is not acting out the mission it wants it to run.
Right. Are we getting a little Discovery season 2 control feeling here? Like this construct has now taken control, right? It's almost like an AI. So it's sort of fun to see that thread and how dangerous is this construct really going to get on this kid show. I think the threat is real, but it's not as heavy as I think Discovery went with Control.
I think what they're doing is all of the writers of the different shows are cutting up ideas and throwing it into a hat. And then once they've used the idea, they throw it back in the hat, and then the next person does it. Because honestly, I mean, we just saw a body swap episode, following this one, and it's like that was just done in Strange New Worlds. And here we have another AI, which they did on Picard, which they also did in Discovery. So yeah, I don't know if they're all just sort of swapping ideas. Like, oh, now here you can use this one. I don't know.
So,
what's everybody else's thoughts?
Yeah. Do you find it a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I don't know, Mark, maybe in your tone, like you don't like it?
No.
Yeah,
Come
I
up with
like
some
it. I
original
like
ideas.
it. Yeah, I like it because it's like self-referencing. So I enjoy it. What do you guys think?
Well, I was listening to a podcast this morning where they were talking about someone watches Prodigy with his little girl. And she's never seen some of these things before. And in the episode that follows this, whereas we've seen that kind of trope quite a bit, his young daughter had not, and found it really interesting and really fascinating, and was laughing and giggling away at it. So yeah, I find it interesting to put it in that context sometimes, I guess. But it is like, it is hard for us as the more experienced viewers as well to be like, oh yeah, we know how this goes.
Kevin Reitzel, what did you think of what Amy's saying about them taking different pieces from Star Trek here and incorporating it into Prodigy?
Yeah, they've been doing it for years. Some do it more creatively than others, and more it's more entertaining and stuff like that. But I think it's almost kind of like a rite of passage. As Mark was saying, that you pick stuff that's been done, but let's put a twist on it. And it's kind of like me and my fascination with Hallmark films. You know how it ends, but you want to see how point A to point B goes.
What about you, Kevin? How are you feeling on this? Are you feeling like they're taking too much, or
no? I've got to agree with Davey here too. Like the point of this show is to bring new young viewers into Star Trek. So if you're doing a show for new viewers, you've got to give them all the tropes so that they can be caught up when it's time to watch an adult Star Trek. So I'm not upset with the Prodigy people, because that's sort of their mission, is to introduce all the concepts of Star Trek to a new generation of fans.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. One last thing I want to hit on with this episode, guys. The tropes call it tomato in the mirror. Holo Janeway is objectively horrified to discover she was subverted by the living construct to betray the crew. what a performance by Kate Mulgrew as holographic Janeway in this, because just the emotion she had to put out, and just in her between sadness and shame, and just that horrified thing that she was controlled and she feels that danger now to the crew. I mean, to me, that was one of the most powerful moments we've had in Prodigy, Kevin Reitzel.
Yeah, it was nice to see holographic Janeway. It had a lot of pull, I'm not going to say power, but a lot of influence helping this young crew. And it was nice to kind of see her control pulled back a little bit with a little bit of danger and, something to kind of like, say, hey, you're not in control as you thought that you were. And like you said, seeing Janeway and being animated well, in addition to seeing the frustration and the sadness of her face of being, in a way kind of being taken control of and advantage of as well.
What about you, Mark? What did you think of how that they portrayed the holographic Janeway in that moment when she's realizing she's now a threat to the crew?
She should get a voice actor award of some kind for that. And then also the animators too, like you could just see the emotion on her CG little face. They did a very good job with that. I thought it was quite touching. Kevin S.
Yeah. I want to talk more about Kate Mulgrew's voice acting when we talk about the next episode, because there's a bit of a tour de force going on there. So I will hold my comments until we reach that point.
Davey, you've been really talking about too the kids' effect on this, and I think with this moment, it's actually a very powerful moment for kids too, because here's kind of like the mother figure for this crew, and the children who are watching this are seeing like, oh my gosh, she's betrayed them. And they make a point, she couldn't control her actions, but still, really powerful moment even for kids.
Yeah, and a great twist for them to sort of sink themselves into. I think about this in the context in the sort of like serials and animated shows that I used to enjoy when I was a kid, and I would have eaten this up. It would just be so like it's so much fun for us, but just imagine how much fun the younger viewers are having with these big shocking reveals. And Kevin, I am so here to talk about Kate Mulgrew's performance the next episode as well, because even in this episode, she is just having a blast doing Janeway again in this, and she's found the voice of Janeway again in a way that's so believable and so natural for how that character would have progressed over the years. And it just such a charismatic performance every episode. I love it.
Amy, what about you? Like I said, everybody's saying we're going to really get into it when we talk about in the next episode, Mindwalk. But what a moment for Janeway, I think, and for the crew, for their reaction, how they reacted to how holographic Janeway reacts to what she's done.
Yeah, I really liked that whole sequence of, the flashbacks of this is what happened, unraveling the mystery. And I mean, Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, we of course know. I still want to point out Rock Talk, the voice actor Riley A. She seriously is my favorite. And when Rock Talk sees the little glitter kiss thing and screams, and I love it. And it's her voice just warms my heart every single time that Rock Talk is talking. And I absolutely love Riley. She's totally my favorite. So I'm going to give a shout out to her as well.
Yeah, I think she definitely is the most identifiable character for a lot of the kids, and really the one that kind of brings them into it. Before we wrap up this episode, guys, just raise your hand and we'll get on you. But is there any other points in this episode you guys want to bring up before we move on to our next episode of Star Trek Prodigy? Looks like everybody is good. So with that, we're going to take a quick break and then head out onto our second away mission, which will be covering episode 18 of Prodigy, which is called Mindwalk. But first, here's a little bit of what's happening on both the Fandom Podcast Network and information about the BQN network as well. We'll be right back.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network.
Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
Well, hopefully, everybody, we're feeding your ears with some great podcasts on both the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN Network. And as they like to say over at the BQN, they will simulate you. I've seen it happen, but it seems to be an enjoyable experience. So I'm just saying. But it is time to begin away mission number 2, where we're going to be talking about Star Trek Prodigy Episode 18, Mindwalk. So let's transport into that away mission. Kind of our penultimate episode of Star Trek Prodigy here, as the last 2 episodes are actually a 2-part episode for Prodigy. So this kind of is leading into a lot of things, and if you've been listening to the whole podcast so far, you know we are going to be gushing about a certain captain, holographic or otherwise, or maybe occupying somebody else's body as well. But it's going to be a fun episode to discuss. Miss Nelson, would you do us the honor of giving us the mission log synopsis?
Yes, the Protostar and Dauntless begin a standoff on the edge of Federation space. Fearing capture, the crew makes a desperate attempt to warn Janeway about the weapon and its power. Zero helps Dahl telepathically communicate with Janeway, who is imprisoned and still unconscious. The plan goes awry and results in Dahl and Janeway swapping bodies. Janeway wakes up in Dahl's body and learns from the kids how they acquired the ship and their intentions. While seeing the weapon up close, she consoles a remorseful hologram Janeway and vows to help them. On the Dauntless, Dahl wakes up in Janeway's now conscious body and attempts to pass himself off as the Admiral, but arouses the suspicion of the crew due to his behavior. Janeway tells Gwen and the others Dahl will be rejected by Starfleet due to his species being outlawed. Meanwhile, the kids deduce the only way to re-swap bodies is for Janeway and Dahl to touch hands. They successfully relay the plan to Dahl through charades, but he is captured and knocked out by the Dauntless crew, who deduces his identity. Dahl wakes up in sickbay and is confronted by the diviner, who lets him escape due to Janeway's kindness towards him, but affirms his intent to destroy Starfleet during the attempt of Janeway and Dahl physically touching. Dahl is caught in a tractor beam by Essentia, who has figured out their plan. Sensing failure, Dahl uses a phaser to complete the connection. Dahl wakes up in his own body and happily reunites with his friends, who decide to keep Janeway's revelation from him. The Protostar comes out of warp to find a fleet of Federation ships waiting for them, along with the Dauntless boxing them in. Janeway awakens in her own body, but to find herself in the brig.
Now, I thought about doing the rest of this podcast and communicating through charades only, but then I realized that would work great for the YouTube channel, not so much for the audio of the podcast. So we're going to just continue as we are. Guys, there's so much great stuff to talk about this episode. So I'm just going to kind of go around the table. Give me your first initial reactions to this episode. Kevin S., I'm going to start with you on this.
I loved this episode. This is what we've been heading towards. This is where we're going. This is the moment where everything changes. Hopefully,
That's a good point. Mark White, what were your initial reactions to this episode?
It was a spectacle. It was visually stunning. I loved all the animation this week, especially when they exited the ship and they were doing the whole touching of hands in the middle of doing high warp. That was really cool. And to touch on what Kevin said, it's like, yeah, this is the moment where finally you have Janeway, at least, understanding where the kids are coming from and why they are running. And so finally, because we've all been hoping for this moment, because we know they're both good sides. Like, the Federation's good and the kids are good, but they weren't able to talk to each other. So this was really pretty awesome. It was a great payoff, and I love the way they did it. So much action.
Very, very much so. Mr. Reitzel, your thoughts on this episode and your first reaction?
You got to have the body swap trope, and it was thrown in this one, and it's done well. It was done really well, and the art was phenomenal. One of my favorite moments is when the Dauntless, is kind of floating right next to the bridge, and you see the crew, and then you see Murph like going to the Tellarite. I thought that was kind of funny, making faces there. And Essentia. Oh, she's bad. She's ready. Was ready to shoot down Janeway and such. And I'm kind of curious to see more of her. I like her. But yeah, the stakes were thrown in front of us, and I'm just eating them up. Love it.
Davey, what about you? What were your initial thoughts on this episode?
Just fun. What a fun, action-packed episode. Star Trek's been giving us a lot of Freaky Friday lately, and yeah, we know it's a bit of a trope, but they're doing it well. Like, it is done so well in this episode. I know it was done really well in Strange New Worlds recently too. I think some people have some issue with the way it was done in Strange New Worlds. I thought it was fabulous. And I know a lot of people have been talking a lot about just how fabulous Kate Mulgrew was in this episode. But I also want to just throw it out and say that Brett Gray doing the Janeway as well was really, really good. The way he slowed it down, the very subtle delivery of the lines, just, a tour de force all round. And a little adult in some parts too, in some of the themes. I watched it again this morning in preparation to come on, and they're stuffing Janeway into the closet, robot things like, oh, let's just blow her out an airlock and kill her. I was like, whoa, okay, intense, but fair enough. But still, I will go back to this one again before the finale comes on in a couple of weeks. It's a great episode, probably one of my favorites so far.
If you've been watching us on YouTube, Miss Nelson looks like she should be on an episode of Headbangers Ball. She's been nodding her head yes so much during this conversation. Amy, I'm going to give you the floor and just let you gush for the next few minutes.
Yes. Okay. So I agree with everything that you all have said. Absolutely. And in addition, I love body swap episodes. So this one, way super fun. That Spock and Muck from Strange New Worlds, like, literally is like right as one of my favorites of all time Trek, like, seriously. And this one is right behind it. But not only do the voice actors have to change their voice, and how fun would that be? But the animation, like how they drew Admiral Dahl, pew, 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 and, doing stretching and the body cracks, like how the animators drew that to be so exactly Dahl in Janeway's body, and then vice versa. just brilliant all the way around. And one other really cool thing that I would like to mention, when Admiral Janeway in Dahl's body and hologram Janeway was testing to see if it was really Janeway, that scene is from the autobiography of Janeway, written by Una McCormick. I don't know if you guys have read that, but that scene is in the book. And I was watching that going, oh my gosh, that is from the book. So that was pretty cool tie-in for that. Kevin.
I had a question, and I might have missed something, so help me out here. When Janeway is in Dahl's body, Dahl's head tail's a lot more animated and moving around.
Thank you. I picked up on that too, so much so that it was annoying me. And I'm wondering, why was that?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and they really didn't dive into that, but maybe just being in that body and not knowing how to control, having an appendage you've never had before, and you don't know how to control it, so it's just kind of neurons are making it do its own thing.
That's where my head went when I was watching it too.
Imagine if he sprouted a tail right now. It'd be weird, right?
Yeah, just a tad bit. There's a lot of little individual moments in this episode to go over, but I think first and foremost, we talked about it when we were talking about the previous episode. I need you guys to get your Janeway, Kate Mulgrew voice acting love. Let's let the floodgates open, because she deserves an Emmy for this episode. As far as voice acting goes, this is one of the best voice acting performances I've seen in a long time. To have such variations with what she's doing, I can't even imagine what it was like for her in the recording booth and just trying to pull off some of this. Amy, I'm going to let you start on this because I know you've been really excited to talk about this.
Yeah, when I first started watching, and seriously, the only notes I took about this episode was, how fun would it be for Janeway to be acting like Dahl? And, you know, just going back, reliving your teenage, young, youthful, and like your voice changes, you know, when you're younger to getting older. And like her voice, somehow she changed it to make it be youthful again. And I am going to throw some love, like what you were saying, Davey, for Brett Gray. His Janeway was spot on to the tone, like you were saying, the speed, like how he was speaking, obviously the words, absolutely. And in fact, it was such a nice transition that when Janeway was talking to Admiral Janeway, and it was really, you know, Kate doing both, but that transition was seamless, like, because that's how good Brett Gray did in impersonating Janeway. So I loved it all.
Kevin S., I know you were absolutely in love with Kate Mulgrew in this episode.
Kate Mulgrew was having the time of her life playing a young kid. Like, she's playing a young kid, really, is what she's doing. She's playing a young kid who's trying to sneak around pretending to be somebody else. And that has got to be just a ball for someone who is, let's say, a little more mature than that. You know, I dabble in acting a little bit too, and I've done a show where I got to play a 10-year-old. As an almost 50-year-old man, I played a 10-year-old, and it's just freeing to play somebody who is that much younger than you and that much different than you. And Kate Mulgrew just rocked it playing Dahl. She had Dahl's voice patterns down. She had Dahl's awkwardness down. She inhabited Dahl, and I loved her for it.
Mark, what about you? Kate was phenomenal in this episode. I've yet to see one negative review of her performance in this episode.
No, I think I said that at the beginning, that was one of the standout things for me from this episode. Like Amy said, it was seamless transition between the two voice actors. When they swapped, you 100% got that the other person was inhabiting their body. I loved that. I thought they did a fantastic job.
Davey, what about you as far as Kate in this episode?
I mean, I could be controversial and be the only person to say that it was a dumpster fire, but my earlier comments would make that not believable for a second. No, it was, just stunning. And I think you got to also give her credit for the fact that she is essentially playing three characters in this episode, because Hollow Janeway as well, I feel she plays her as a slightly younger version of the character from whenever Hollow Janeway was sort of brought to be, and then she's playing Dahl and the rest. And look, so many cute little moments, just both in terms of how they match the animation to what the characters are doing. Just fun little moments like she's playing with the Voyager thing on the desk, and for the first time ever, references her trauma of being turned into a salamander as well. So thank you for finally addressing that and working through that, Janeway. We've been needing that for you for quite some time. And look, it's out there. Now what she needs to do is just to get together with Tom Harris, and they just need to just hash it out and go and find their kids. But anyway, yes, I digress. Loved it. Emmy, all the awards, all the Janeway, all the Kate Mulgrew, all done.
Kevin Reitzel. Not only is Kate's performance so amazing in this too, you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit at times, and we talked about it on Union Fed too. She's making a lot of people I know want to go back and rewatch Voyager, because they're bringing up the show is bringing up so many Voyager memories too, and her performance in this had me wanting to go back and revisit Voyager.
Yeah, Kate, it's one of the highlights of Voyager. Obviously, she's the captain, she's a star, but she was a captain that got her hands on and hands dirty, and she also had a very scientific mind as well, which was very cool to see from a captain, in addition to the diplomacy skills that captains need. But I would love to see, and I don't know if there's any outtakes or behind the scenes of seeing, I know some of these were probably done during, COVID, and not everyone gets to record together. But I'd love to see some behind the scenes of Brett Gray and Kate Mulgrew kind of like, taking notes on each other, and, because the animations got it down too, especially the scene behind where, Dal is in Kate's body, and, she's in her office or and then you got Essentia there, and then the Tellarite doctor, I think, and, and trying to see if she's okay. And then she says, she gets up to the bridge, pushes the doctor in there saying, you with the horns or whatever, you're in charge. I can she had a lot of fun doing it. And I'm so happy that Kate Mulgrew is back as this character, and I can only assume she is having a blast doing so. And the fans are loving it.
I know the fans are loving it. I think she's having an absolute blast as well. But there's a lot of little things that happen in this episode. So I'm going to jump into some Easter eggs, trivia, and tropes here, because we've got a lot of moments in this episode. So I'm going to just read off some moments, and you guys hear when you want to talk about, raise your hand, let me know. First and foremost, I want to talk about a couple of callbacks that happened in this episode. One with Dahl, where they call back to Masquerade and talking about him having these telepathic abilities, all these untapped abilities that Dahl has that could play going forward. And we talked about this in the episode Masquerade. How much of his untapped abilities are we going to start exploring? And we started doing that with this episode, with exploring his own telepathy and obviously being enhanced by Zero, which led to, of course, our Freaky Friday body swap. But there was another great callback too that I loved, that was just so out of the blue for me. And I also loved how they even had the crew animated to look completely baffled by that when Janeway talks about the time she got turned into a salamander. And I just love these great little callbacks that they have with that.
Mark had something you want to say.
Yeah, Mark.
So I think it's interesting that they're doing this with Dahl's character here, where he is augmented in some way. Of course, we had that dealt with in Strange New Worlds as well with Una. But to me, the more they talk about it in Star Trek, the less to me it makes sense, because it doesn't seem to be the IDIC philosophy if they're going to exclude this whole group of people, and especially Dahl. He had no control over how he was born. It's like this was done. Somebody else created him, so maybe the person that did it should be penalized. I don't know. So that's one thought. Secondly, to touch on the salamanders, I can't talk about the salamanders without bringing up, friend of the BQN network, Captain Jeremiah on Twitter, who happens to own that episode. He got it from Paramount, so it made me think of him immediately, and I think that he probably watched this episode and is loving it.
Does that episode become like the Plan 9 of outer space for Star Trek? It's like so bad it's good, and now it's like got this thing about it that people just always want to reference it and mention it in some type of Star Trek conversation.
Oh my goodness, an Ed Wood reference! We just covered the film Ed Wood on my show, It's Green, which you can find if you become a patron of the BQN network.
Davey, you had something you want to interject.
I was pretty much just going to agree that I think that Threshold has somehow gone from being like the Sub Rosa of Voyager to pretty much just a timeless classic. I remember when I watched it as a kid, and its effect I still felt today. So I'm so bad it's good. I don't even think it's bad. I think it was just amazing from the outset.
So, guys, you can give me all the medical scans you want, all the brainwave scans you want, whatever you scientific device you have to detect who's who. But when Janeway spits out her coffee, you just know something's not right. I think that was one of the best moments of the episode. Is like, we know something's wrong, and then she spits out the coffee, and then everybody's like, "Okay, no, we're taking you to sick bay right now."
Especially since we know that she's only been drinking tea lately.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is her first cup of coffee in years.
Yeah, she should be enjoying it, savoring it. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that
this stuff.
I think that was one of the best moments, small moments that they had in here. But just one of the things too that Amy, you're familiar with this week, and Kevin as well, because we've been talking about this on this show, is how are they going to communicate? How are we going to get the message to Admiral Janeway? What's going on with the protostar that they can't interact with it? We always figured we would have a scene between human Janeway and holographic Janeway, and we got it, and we kind of didn't get it in the aspect she was in Dahl's body. And Amy, you brought this up. It's in Janeway's biography, but to finally get that scene, did it feel like, okay, yeah, this is so powerful right here?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you remember, I think it was episode 2 of Union, the one that we covered 3 and 4. And I was like, that I would like to see Janeway talking to Janeway. And it came true. Guys, this never happens. Like, for me to even think outside the box like that and then to see it happen, this has never happened. I'm just saying it was me. I said it. And it was so rewarding to see. I loved it.
Any of you other guys have reactions? Because this is a pretty big deal for this show, is to have that moment happen. And I think a lot of people have been anticipating it in one form or another. This isn't quite how I thought they were going to get to it, Kevin.
Yeah, I think it was Mark that mentioned earlier that touched on it, or maybe it was Kevin S. I can't remember, but that this puts Janeway really in touch with the crew and their situation, and she becomes understanding and sympathetic, empathetic as well. And I think it was also important too that Janeway really understand Dal, because the fact that she makes the comment that he's an augment and that he may not, and he won't build, Starfleet's not going to like that and want to have Dal join Starfleet for that reason. And he's 26 species, so you kind of wonder like which of these species triggers what certain things with him as well. Mark?
Kevin, do you think that maybe they're setting this up to be where Dahl transforms that whole thing and finally they put it to bed? Because that's a possibility as well. We don't know where they're at in Discovery time, whether or not they still ban augments or not. And they haven't really touched on it with Picard. I don't know where this lines up with Picard, but I think it's around this similar time. What's everybody's thoughts? Do you guys think that maybe through this character of Dahl, we'll finally put to bed the ban on the augments?
I think one of the things
Go ahead,
that's
Tom.
interesting with that is because we have it in Strange New Worlds and we have it in this. It feels like this is something that the Star Trek writers' room is really looking at bringing up. And it's like this is like it feels like okay, we haven't really addressed this big topic in Star Trek that's hanging out there now that really kind of applies in some ways to today's world. So I think it's something that you're looking to address across the board. Kevin, what were your thoughts on that? Right.
Yeah, I think. Sorry. Go ahead. Oh, real quick. Yeah, I think this is like Mark just mentioned. I think this is something they want to tackle now because, it might be a case by case basis, but I think that if we have someone like Dal who has, unwillingly been created, and put in a situation that they want to have a character like Dal evolve and mature as well, and he becomes leader. And through both Janeways now, both witnessing this, I think that will help him and his case, and maybe have the Federation look twice at this because, I think that when people like Data can become an officer and do that, and have these people that come from these diverse backgrounds that might kind of be sketchy. I mean, look what happened to Tom Paris, and look what became of him. He was given a second chance. So I think there'd be a nice character arc to also then affect what the procedures happen going forward in Starfleet.
I think all excellent thoughts there. Next question I have, guys, though, is we see another character have a very interesting perspective all of a sudden in this episode, and that is the Diviner. When he frees Janeway, thinking it's Janeway when it's actually Dahl, but he's also admits to Janeway that he found Starfleet to be more compassionate and kind than he ever anticipated, but he will continue his mission to save his world by destroying them. And also how he releases Janeway because she saved his life at Tars Lamora, and also asking that she look after Gwen, which of course it's the Dahl response. I would do anything to protect Gwen too. And you can it's a great shot where they pan to him and he's kind of like, what the hell? Like, that doesn't sound, I appreciate it. Doesn't sound quite right. Amy, that was a twist I wasn't really seeing coming, to be honest.
Yeah, I think with the little bit from last episode of Gwen talking to the bartender father figure, like he's becoming more complex. He's getting more of his story and we're understanding his side. So he's becoming more sympathetic. And I wanted to ask you guys, do you see that as maybe with him becoming more sympathetic? And obviously now we've got the Starfleet, or at least Janeway, understanding what's going on with the Protostar, that maybe now the Diviner might turn and try and figure out a way to stop the construct? Or is the Diviner still going to be the bad guy till the end? Mark?
I think the Diviner's still going to be the bad guy to the end. And I want to point out that, we're still in the first season, and just a few episodes back, he abandoned his daughter on a planet that could have killed her just so he can get his hands on a shiny ship. So I don't know. I guess he was doing that sort of to protect his species or whatever. But it didn't appear that way in the episode. If you go back and rewatch that episode, it totally looks like he's just like, no, peace. I'm taking the shiny ship. It's like a Corvette. Woo, I got it.
But now because of his experience with Janeway, it sort of softened him. Davey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you could be right. I've been thinking over the last few weeks as well that a Diviner sort of redemption could be about it. But I think he will get very close to doing something that he would not regret, and perhaps realize that he's no better than what he thought Starfleet was when they destroyed his world. But yeah, that's what I was trying to kind of make that point earlier. Is I think we're going to see a little bit more sort of layers to the Diviner apart from him just being evil for the sake of being evil. He certainly has these motivations to be so. But yeah, I hold out hope that the diviner will see the light.
We're gonna place bets. We're gonna place bets.
Yeah.
Kevin, what do you? Kevin asked, what do you get for the odds on the diviner going good?
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a case of you can hate the organization but love individuals in it. He's come to respect Janeway, even though that she is part of the Federation and Starfleet, which he abhors. So I think it's a for the diviner, it's a sense of him getting to know people on an individual level, as opposed to this faceless organization that is Starfleet in his mind. So I don't know, and I think we could end up in a place where maybe they can talk this out. Is it set in stone that what has happened, or that what will have happened to the diviner's world will happen? We don't know that either. Maybe things can be changed.
It looks like we lost Kyle for a second there. I'm going to go ahead and chime on that till he gets back. You know, it's tough to really. There's part of me that wants the diviner to learn his lesson, and he's got to either like, do you want to have a relationship with your daughter, or do you want to go through this revenge plot? You can't have both. And I kind of feel like when he let Janeway go, I feel like that he was kind of serving himself. If she's free, she has her trust as well, and I think he's kind of playing the long game here. But you know, if he continues with this revenge plot, I don't know. I don't think it'll work out well for him. But I still believe that he's bad. I still believe that he's not, you know, he's not on the right track here, because I mean, how do you just throw away this relationship with your daughter? I find that a tough thing to do. Amy, do you have something you want to say?
Well, he created his daughter for a purpose. Yeah. So like that initial thing. And I think, I don't know, like, I feel like Essentia might be playing a bigger role that again, there could be, he might have to go against her because of his change of heart. And again, that's totally me and my idealism that everyone can turn good at no matter when.
Well, I wanted to.
What do you guys think about Essentia?
Oh, yeah. Davey, you go.
Yeah, I very much so. Amy, you and I are on the same wavelength with this, because I'm having the same thoughts that, you know, Essentia is probably going to be, the diviner will change his mind, and then Essentia is going to double down, and it's going to sort of come down between them. I also think that there are so many loose threads that need to be wrapped up in one more 22-minute episode, or I think there's one or two more 22-minute episodes to go. And that's going to be tricky. So I think the diviner's arc may not be over at the end of this season. I hope not, because John Noble, fabulous Australian voice actor, will hopefully be returning for season 2.
Kevin S. Essentia.
I loved her when we first met her. I thought she was this go-getting young ensign who was doing all the right things. When we found out that she made a heel turn, I was floored. I did not see that coming at all. So I do think that she is, at this point, I feel she is more dedicated to the mission than the diviner is. I think, again, it may be because of timey-wimey things. I don't think she has been back doing the mission as long as the diviner has. I think they may have been sent off at the same time, but that the diviner ended up back 10 years before she did. So he's been working at this a long time and is getting tired of it. She's still fresh-faced and ready to go, and needs to see this mission through to its end. So she's a villain I love to hate. I hate that she's pulled one over on our Janeway, and not to mention the rest of the crew, Captain Antennas and Tuskface the Doctor, and she's kind of my I love to hate her character at the moment.
Mark, what about you? Love to hate her or love to love her? Kind of wanting to see her succeed in whatever she wants to do.
Oh, that was an interesting twist. And also, a lot of people were saying at the beginning that the voice actress didn't recognize her voice. I forget what her name is.
Jamila Jamil.
But Jamila Jamil, there we go. She was in The Good Place. And I agree. The first few episodes where we see her and are introduced to her character, I don't recognize her voice. But now that she's flipped to the dark side or whatever, and you find that she's got this whole other motive, now I hear her voice and I can tell that it's her. And so that's kind of cool. I think that what may happen, I was thinking this while everybody was talking, is that perhaps the diviner may have a change of heart and she might end up being the big bad. Who could be a plot twist.
Amy, looks like you had a thought there.
Yeah, well, just Mark, I totally am the same way with Jamila Jamil. I cannot recognize her voice. And it was this episode when it like zoomed in like on her lips. And I'm like, oh, that's Jamila Jamil's lips. Like, I don't know. It was the strangest thing, but it was, this episode where it's like, okay, I can hear her now. So interesting.
Guys, I have one more trope that I want to bring up, but it's about the cliffhanger that we see. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap up and get our final thoughts on this and discuss the cliffhanger here. All right, Kyle has lost his internet. He's going to try to get back on here, so hopefully he can join us before the end of this awesome episode here. We are, of course, discussing this last episode here, but I want to talk about how it ended. I want to get your guys' thoughts here. The cliffhanger. The episode ends with the Protostar downwarping into Federation space, surrounded by a Starfleet armada, with Admiral Janeway in the Dauntless. Unable to warn them of the danger. Mark, I want to start with you here. When you saw how this thing ended here, I was getting flashbacks to like certain TNG episodes and DS9 episodes with armadas showing up all over the place. But Janeway's in the bridge. Your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen? Thoughts on that as well?
Well, my thoughts on this scene are, yes, again, there's reminiscent of TNG and Deep Space Nine because it is a lot of the older style ships that we're seeing, including the Defiant, which I posted that in the BQN Collective. Some sharp-eyed listener had seen that and pointed that out, but I thought that was really cool. There's a lot of cool Easter eggs in that scene of the various ships throughout, especially the 90s era Trek, and I thought that was awesome.
What about you, Kevin S.?
I love this cliffhanger. I think it may be the best one we've had yet. I do think that Janeway does have a golden tongue and she can probably talk her way out of the brig. She's just got to, I think there might be, she's got some allies there. I think the Tellarite Doctor is probably one of her best allies, because she has butted heads with the commander, the Andorian commander, already. So I don't know if he trusts her as much as somebody like the Doctor will. So, I'm hoping she can talk her way out of the brig because she's the only one who can stop this right now. The only one who can stop this is Janeway.
Davey, your thoughts on the cliffhanger here? Yeah, Kevin, I think you're right there. I have a feeling that Janeway and the brig will probably find itself resolved very quickly in the next episode. I don't see how she can stay in there for too long. I know they thought she kind of lost the plot a little bit there, but I think that will resolve very quickly. However, I do love me some Starship porn, and did we not get some of it in the end of that? A fan.
Hold on. Did you just say Starship porn?
I did, yes.
I love it.
It's not some weird delay that happens over the internet between Australia and the US.
That was great.
Yeah, and they look like, I hope we get some more close-up shots of those, because like the way they animated the Sovereign class in like Lower Decks and all that, like in that animation style, they're doing such a stunning job. I just can't wait to see how the animators of Prodigy do some of those ships in the next episode. I'm hoping we get a little bit more of that, a little bit more space battle. But yeah, fabulous ending. Great cliffhanger. One thing I will say about the Prodigy cliffhangers is that they are abrupt. It's like, thing happened, credits. And you're like, no, more of the thing. Please, I need to know what's happening. No, to be continued. It's just, boom, credits. Anyway.
You're right about that. Amy, your thoughts on the cliffhanger here? Janeway's in the bridge. Uh-oh.
Yep. It was really cute when Dahl was like, about that. Because it's like he left her in such a terrible spot. And it's like, Dahl, come on. You have seen hologram Janeway all this time. Act more like her. It just, oh, it was so funny. And I'm like, okay, is this just, hijinks are still going to ensue. But yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, she's going to get out of it. And I'm wondering, like, we saw all those ships. Are we going to get some, lovely little name drops of potential captains that might pop up? And what's the plan, Admiral? Or, something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love the way you put that, Davey. I like how abrupt these cliffhangers are, because when you go back and rewatch them, whether you're marathoning them, it flows really, really well. I've noticed, because I did that for since like episode 13. I marathon all up to just today. I finished this most recent episode, and it was, even though it kind of ran together a little bit, it was nice to kind of just go boom, 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 and it felt like, like those old serials you used to watch, cliffhangers back in the day. Guys, we're going to wrap things up here, but I do want to ask you one last question, and also give you the opportunity, if there's anything else that you did want to bring up this episode. Going back to when you first started watching Star Trek Prodigy, are you happy with where things have ended up now, story-wise, character-wise? Did you expect that it was going to get to where it was now, being near the end of season 1 here? There looks like they're in touch with Starfleet finally. We've had some character development. We've had not so much character development, depending on who you're talking about. But I want to get your thoughts on where you think this is going, and are you satisfied thus far going into the final 2 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy? Mark, start with you.
I was a hard sell from the beginning. I'm not really into kids shows. I don't really watch Disney stuff. But it was Star Trek, so I thought I'd check it out. And then the first episode or 2 really didn't seem like Star Trek, but I kind of liked the animation. And then slowly it started being like a Star Trek show. And I just fell in love, I guess, like everybody else. Now I'm like really into it as much as I'm into pretty much all the other shows. And I am excited to see what they end up doing with it. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with John Noble. Are they going to, if they run like 10 seasons long, not that they will, but if they're going to run even a few seasons, is he going to be the only villain, or do you think that maybe they'll have a villain this season and the next season will be a different one, but his character will stay? And there is why I think that he might have redemption, because I think if he gets redeemed, then he can start helping them, and then they can go fight other villains. So that's my fan theory, dropping it here. And Kyle missed it. But here he is.
I caught the tail end. Which one of you used the construct on me? I'd like to know.
It was brilliant. What I just said was just brilliant. You totally missed it.
Kyle, we're doing the wrap up question right now. It's kind of asking everyone quickly to how they felt about how this first season has come along. Are they satisfied with where it looks like it's going and such? So, and speaking of that, Kevin S., go ahead and let me know what you think.
I think, we were given a brand new set of characters, very alien characters at the beginning, and we are only 18 episodes into this series, and I've grown to love all of them. So I think the writers have done a fantastic job of both giving us character arcs for each of our lead characters, and giving us a story arc that we are excited to come back to week after week. I gotta hand it to the Hagerman brothers and our friend Aaron, who writes on the show. You know, these writers are doing a fantastic job of keeping me excited and really willing to keep this show going, because I want to know where it's going. And I have a feeling that we may wrap up this diviner plot sooner rather than later, and we might get, because once these kids are in the Federation, our story's going to pivot again. And I think where the pivot goes is going to be fascinating to watch, and I am along for the ride.
Davey, how are you feeling where the season's gone? Has it surprised you?
Yeah, especially the second half. Although I was just kind of giggling to myself when Mark said he wasn't into kids shows or kids. So, but yeah, no, I wasn't sold on the first half, to be honest. I was like, yeah, this is nice. I hope the younger audience enjoys this. And it's almost like they put about like somewhere between that part A and part B, they've gone, actually, no, we're going to take this in a whole different direction. We're just going to throw all the references at you all the time, and we're going to make it super fun for the older audience to watch with the younger audience, you know, a true family program. So to that end, yeah, really, really satisfied that I can sit here and enjoy it and know that I think they've really nailed the whole concept of a younger audience. I want to keep sort of saying kids, but like a young audience version of Star Trek for a new generation to be at the STLVs of the future. So yeah, really, really happy with the direction it's going in, and can't wait for more. In fact, I think I'll be a little disappointed when it's over.
Same question to you, Amy.
Yeah. As you were saying, Davey, yeah, we don't like kids. I'm right there with you. And then I was looking around the little room here, and I'm like, none of us have kids. We're all talking about this kid show. So
We're all winning at life.
yes, we are. I love it. Yeah, I too struggled, and we've talked about this more so with Lower Decks, but the animation period, and like you, Davey, the second half of the first season has just been powerful. I've loved the character development, especially that one where they were sharing their little stories, and the ghost, and the holodeck, because we got to know a little bit more. So they are really developing these characters, and I think, yeah, they're gonna get into Starfleet, and I think second season is gonna go on that track. I do think we're gonna finish up with the Diviner. I don't know what's gonna happen to the construct, if it's gonna go right next to where's the containers in Lower Decks are. Come on, help me out, guys. Where they put the guy, the evil computer.
AIs in, yeah.
Yes, the evil construct is going to go right next to that one in Lower Decks. So, yeah, it's interesting, and I'm not as anxious. I'm still like Picard and Strange New Worlds. I'm putting those up a little bit, but Prodigy's right. Whatever's on is my favorite Trek. That's it.
I've been surprised of where it's gone when I first started watching the show, and I still am amazed by the animation and the visuals. I've become attached to this crew as well. It has not gone where I expected, and that's a good thing. Personally, and I'm enjoying to see where it goes from here. And as for this cliffhanger, this is the game changer, and I hope it doesn't disappoint, because there's a lot of questions to be answered, and I hope that they don't just leave it hanging too much for the second season. I want to see some closure, but still questions of where it will take us next season. Kyle, to you, same question, close us out.
Well, first of all, little internet hiccup here, so I apologize to the listeners, but that is why we have such an awesome first officer. He is the so thank you very much for filling in while I was having technical difficulties.
Yeah, no worries. Got your back.
As far as Prodigy goes, the show has been a huge surprise to me. I think Trek animation as a whole in this current iteration of Trek has been absolutely outstanding and a huge surprise. But this show, I think, honestly, except for Strange New Worlds, is the most well-written show that Star Trek does in the aspect of getting us to know the characters, giving us an incredibly interesting story. And I think it's been such a great gateway for younger Trek fans to use this show to hop on with this. But you know what, guys? I'm going to throw a curveball in because you guys have all predicted about the crew ending up in Starfleet. We still have a Chakotay mystery to solve. I could see something happening where they get the construct out, but because of ramifications of getting the construct out, maybe it sends the protostar through one of those temporal anomalies or wormholes again, and then there's our crew lost again somewhere. But their mission is ending up finding Chakotay or something like that, and then maybe we have Chakotay as a big part of season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy. So I just.
Maybe Michael Burnham finds Chakotay.
No.
Far in the future.
We keep Burnham to Discovery. That's all I'm saying. Yes, Kevin.
I just want to say that I am very happy that this is not one of those cases where two shows are going to overlap at the end of a season. That this season of Prodigy is going to be able to finish out without it being overshadowed by the premiere of the new season of Picard or Discovery. So I'm very happy that that's going to happen this year.
I'm hoping Paramount Plus has learned their lesson from that, and this is going to be the trend going forward. But it's been a fun talk to talk everything Prodigy. I'm excited for what we got coming up with the season finale on a 2-part episode. But with that, you guys, it's time to catch a little subspace signals and close this episode of Union Federation out. Okay, of course, you can find the Union Federation podcast not only on the Fandom Podcast Network on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the video version of the show on the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. You can also find it on the BQN network, where they will assimilate all the podcasts around them. As for me personally, you can find me, Kyle, on Twitter at AKyleW. You can find me on Instagram at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me, of course, on Facebook and also in the Union Federation Facebook group. Also lurking there at the BQN. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix.
And of course, Amy, where can people find you and the BQN?
Well, please follow the network at BQN Podcasts on Twitter and on Instagram. You can listen to me talk a little more Star Trek on Galaxy Class with my good friend Kevin S. Also talking all good things with my good friend Mark W. And I'm also on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, and in our Facebook group, Union Fed, and in BQN Collective.
And I want to thank our amazing guests from BQN. I put out the Star Trek signal into the sky. You all saw that Delta in the Gotham City sight line, and you all came running. So thank you so much for that. Davey, where can people find you on social media? And tell us, and where can they find the BQN?
Yeah, so I guess first of all, you can find my new show on the BQN, the Trexperts Quiz, where anywhere you can get podcasts at the moment. There are a few other shows with the word Trexperts in the title. Ours is the Trexperts Quiz, where each week we have 2 contestants go head-to-head to battle it out for nerd supremacy. It's a bit of a game show. A and Mark have both been on it, so maybe Carl, Kevin, and Kevin, we could put you in the hot seat sometime soon as well.
Yes, that needs to happen. That needs to happen.
Amy's got that evil twinkle in her eye. So
yes, because I know what it does to co-hosts. Like I was on with Joe, and man,
yeah, it's certainly a way to test one's rapid recall. But yes, you can also find myself on social media at TrexpertBiz by searching for that on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And you can find me lurking out in the BQN Facebook group as well.
Kevin S., where can people find you when you're not working some Christmas magic?
Well, good thing Christmas is this Sunday, so we can wrap up the Christmas magic for another year. But you can find me. I do a podcast that's not on either one of these networks. How could that happen? But it's called True North Nerds. I do it with a couple of local friends. We try to keep things central to our area and make things a little more focused. But you can find us at True North Nerds on Twitter and Instagram, and you can always find me in the BQN Collective, posting random things and replying to Ria's gifts that she posts.
Yeah,
and
she
memes.
posts a lot of gifts too.
Yeah.
Mark, there's a rumor has it you say it's actually pretty easy being green.
Well, it is for me.
Where can people find you and your other fun projects on social media?
Well, people can find me this week on Galaxy Class, on All Good Things, coming up on Trek Spurts Quiz. Also, if you become a patron of the network on Patreon, you can listen to me on It's Green. So there's literally 4 ways to find my annoying voice on the air. Also, you can find me on Twitter at MarkWhite207 or in the BQN Collective. Now, I've been doing my own little quiz on the BQN Collective lately. It was something I used to do on the Federation group, but I've been doing on BQN, where I'm posting random screenshots of whatever Star Trek episode I'm watching and making guesses, and that's been a lot of fun as well.
These guys at BQN do a phenomenal job, and I also want to just say a quick congratulations on All Good Things 100th episode. That's
Nice.
Woo!
So congratulations there. Of course, too, you can find the Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and of course the Union Federation Facebook group too. Between those, you should be covered on all news Star Trek. And as we close out, we look at the orb of prophecy of what's coming ahead in Trek. Obviously, first and foremost is the season finale of Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, the 2-part episode that, you know what, guys, it's been a great season. It's been so fun on Prodigy. I'm looking forward to this. I'm like you guys said, I'm great. It's getting to shine on its own. But Supernova Part 1 and 2, we will be covering on the next episode of Union Federation. And of course, then a little bit of a break, but I think we have some Orville stuff we might cover in the in-between of this break before Picard Season 3, the third and final season of Picard, launches on February 16th, 2023. And then sometime later in the year, we will have Discovery Season 5 and Strange New World Season 2. Mr. Reitzel, real quick, we have a very good friend. His name is Johnny K. He's been on this show talking about his Farragut Forward project, which is looking outstanding, but he has a new project out. We've been getting a lot of love on the Fandom Podcast Network across the board, but I want to give it a little love here because not only I know we have Star Trek fans on that listen to the show, we have some Batman fans who listen to the show.
Yeah, Johnny K's fan film, The Oath, a Batman fan film. This is a mock-up of mine, by the way. Just released for free on YouTube. Please give it a listen and a watch. Check it out. If you're a fan of the original Batman 1989, and I don't know who isn't, he filmed his prequel to that. It takes place about a week before that original movie happens, and he did a great job. It's within 10 days, it's already got over 100,000 views, and we just had him on the network for a special, interviewing him and his cast members, talking about it. And then we also just had him on for Batman 89 Couch Potato Theater with a couple of the other cast members as well. So make sure you check that out, and stay tuned for his Star Trek project, Farragut Forward. The teaser trailer has already been released. We've done a special with him regarding that, and really, really excited for him and happy for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, one last thing into the Orb of Prophecy. Tomorrow night, a very special recording of a Couch Potato Theater, as the BQN and FPN will continue their partnership, as we will be discussing Star Trek 2009. I know, Amy Nelson, that you are very excited for this, as is everybody who's going to be stepping up. But I know you have a personal love of Star Trek 2009.
Who doesn't? I love it.
There it is, right there. We'll be recording that, and hopefully that will be out as a Christmas present for everybody from the Union Federation, the BQN, and the Fandom Podcast Network. Again, thank you to my absolutely amazing crew. This has been the packed Union Federation we've had in a while for crew, but you guys are all amazing. I will never send any of you to the lower decks unless you request it to be done. But with that, to all of our amazing listeners, thank you for listening us through this year. We hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. And until next time, hailing frequencies are now closed.